Okay, here's my zip form. I've already signed in. So I'm going to start with a business listing. So this is what we did with the business listing for Mo's Egg House. Okay. Now you guys probably seen all those photos that I took regarding Mo's Egg House. Anyway, I've already imported the business listing agreement into the folder. So I'm just going to open it up. In fact, I've already have everything prepared. I'm just going to go over the business listing agreement. Just a sample listing agreement so you know how to prepare a business listing agreement. In fact, I probably will do a seminar on the sale of business. That way we can, we can just have variety on our seminar series. Instead of just on real estate all the time, we can have seminar on sale of business too. Anyway, so this is an exclusive right to sell for the business listing agreement. Company, the client is a business entity. Previously, we had put down LLC. Apparently, that was a wrong entity, and he reminded me to change it, which I did this morning. And after I changed it, I sent him a new e-sign. I've already signed, just waiting for him to sign. Okay, don't know if he's going to sign it, but we did a 4 months listing for this. I figure I might as well devote all my time and energy within the 4 months and try to get it sold instead of drag it out. In fact, I don't normally like to drag something out. Okay, if I can't sell it in 4 months, so be it. And this, it's a 4 months listing. A few important things here is the documentation. Sometimes one of my concerns, if I sign a business listing with client, if I check so many different boxes, it might spook them off. It might make them think that I was trying to get too much confidential information from him before I start promoting the property. So the only thing I actually asked him to give me is just the leases. I could have asked him a lot more, but I prefer to just check these 2 boxes for assets to be determined upon commencement of listing on an as-needed basis. I think it's probably better that way. Maybe it's less intimidating to them because honestly, if you want something from them, you just ask. If they want to sell the property, the business, they want to give you whatever that is necessary to help you sell, to let you help sell the business. So I don't see the necessity of checking so many different boxes. If you need something, after you sign the listing agreement, just get it from them. But the thing that I really need is the leads, because I think that is the most important thing to me, for me anyway, the leases. So I want to kind of have the leases. And it's probably less intimidating to them or less burdensome to them to provide you the leases than to have to go ahead and provide you all those information. I don't know why they're in here, honestly. If you need something, just ask. Just ask for them. I mean, here you got like inventory, machinery, list of everything. Ultimately, you certainly will want him or them to provide you these things so that you can provide to your prospective buyers. But that's only after your prospective buyer has signed a non-competition, non-circumvention agreement. You know what a non-competition, non-circumvention agreement is? Basically, before you share all of this confidential information about the business, just imagine customer list. You think you ever asked the client to give you the customer list upon signing of this listing agreement and then they'll just give it to you? Probably not. So, I mean, a lot of these boxes, honestly, I would not even try to check them. I check the ones that I really need, the leases, and then the rest, if I need something, I would rather wait until he put a signature on the dotted line before I ask for so many different things. Okay, so I really don't think it's that necessary. So after he reviewed the agreement, the only thing that he had an issue on was just the name of the entity. Apparently, he didn't have any issue with the rest of it because I didn't ask for too many things. Okay. And then the rest, really, I mean, it's the list of price. So we're going to list it for 1.75. We wanted to list it for 1.95. I said, no, that's very tough to sell at 1.95. Even 1.75 is already tough to sell. Okay. Additional purchase terms, I say sale of business only. Owner agrees to include necessary training in the management of the business in the purchase agreement to be negotiated with buyers on terms satisfactory to the parties. Because we anticipate that whoever that is going to buy the business is going to require some sort of training as far as the management is concerned. For this particular business, is basically the owner doesn't have to have a lot of involvement. The nice thing about this business, it's a hands-off business. The personnel, existing personnel, are all trained to run the restaurant, and they can actually basically handle the register. They have authorization to deposit money into the bank account. All the owner has to do is to monitor the deposit every day. So, but then there's still some training that is required of the owner, such as certain business filings, payroll, board of equalization filings, things like that, concerning the management of the business. Compensation, I put down 6%. That's actually on the lower side. I could easily go to 8% for business anyway. For business, sometimes you can get about 8%. Okay, so you don't always have to use 6. Because I wanted to get this one, so I went in a little lower. Even after I negotiated 6, he asked me how much commission you're seeking. I said 6. He said, all right, I'm not telling you yet, but if you can find me a buyer, I'll give you more incentives upon close of escrow. No, that's total. 6% total. Yeah. We don't negotiate commission based on one side only. It's total. And then, of course, the split is 3% to the buyer side, right? So you put the 3% here, okay? I just use the CAR form because it's easy to use. I could have used something else, but I think CAR form works okay, so I use the CAR form. Okay, I check business escrow, no need appraisal, so I just skip appraisal. But sometimes, you may need to have appraisal. MLS, I stated that I was going to put it on the MLS, but honestly, for sale of business, it doesn't work very well. If you try to sell business through the MLS, you're better off to sell it on LookNet or some other channel, okay, or buy sell. LookNet is pretty good actually for business. It's actually pretty good. I actually got a lot of buyers contacts through LookNet when we listed restaurants for sale. Very, very good response from LookNet anyway. So I don't really need to go to too many different places. LookNet works well. In this case, he did not want a for sale sign on the property. Sometimes you don't want a for sale sign on the property because you don't want the employees to know, right? So you just can't have for sale sign because I think sometimes it may affect the morale of the employees. You don't want to put for sale sign on the property, okay? And then additional terms, broker may market this property to overseas buyers and with the owner's cooperation, prepare promotional video as part of its ongoing marketing efforts. Whatever additional term you want to put in here, you can put in here. Broker shall keep financial information provided by owner confidential, but may, upon obtaining signed non-disclosure, non-circumvention agreements from other brokers or any prospective buyers, release such confidential information. It should say to the owner, okay? Let me go ahead and correct that. Oh, no, not to the owner. Such confidential information the owner has authorized the broker to release, so the grammar is correct. Under this condition, I got a surprise guest. Jenny is here. Jenny, you sit. Okay. I don't know if she's able to take off today. So nothing wrong with this paragraph, so I'm going to leave it as is. Okay. And, you know, the rest is pretty standard. Car form. And, you know, you guys are familiar with this already, so I don't need to go over this. Okay. So this is what a business listing will look like. Now, do you need an agency disclosure or not? For sale of business, it's not required. The law does not require agency disclosure, so I did not prepare one. Okay. So since it was not required, I did not prepare one. So let me go ahead and save this. So I just saved this document, but I did previously email this to client for signature already. Really, all you need is just a business listing agreement. You do not need any advisory document at the moment. Just make sure the client signs first, and then worry about the rest of the documents. Worry about getting other documents from the client later on. Okay. So this car form is actually very convenient and very easy to use for sale of business. So if you ever have a chance to be involved in a sale of a business, you know which form to use the next time. Okay. Now we're done with sale of business. Now let's go ahead and do another listing. Now this one, how about I try 9915 Garden Grove. Okay, now this is a commercial listing that it's in the city of Garden Grove. And because it is a commercial listing, I prefer to use the AIR form, A-I-R. You know why you want to use AIR form? So that, you know, when commercial agent, they look at the car form, it's so foreign to them. They don't like car forms. So when you deal with commercial real estate agents, they hate seeing car form because they are not familiar with car forms. But they are very familiar with AIR form. Okay? And now, AIR form actually requires a separate subscription. It doesn't come free with your NAR membership. Your NAR membership gives you a free subscription for car forms, but not AIR forms. The AIR form, if you subscribe to it, it's about $100 a year. Okay? If you do enough commercial, it's worth it. Okay? So I subscribe to the AIR form. One thing about marketing commercial property. Oh, okay, we're in. All right. So this is an AIR form. AIR form allows you, it's basically one form that you can use for sale or for lease. Okay, so in this case, we're using it for sale. And this information, you know how to fill this out. You got the client's information. Now this information, the client's name is actually very important. Always double check and confirm this name with client before you start completing the form. It will save you a lot of trouble. I would have had that most egg house listing agreement signed a lot earlier had I sent a text message to a client to confirm the business name. I swear to you, when I was at his office going through his paperwork, I saw that all his documents are in LLC's name, and suddenly I was surprised that he wanted to be under Inc., so I'm still a bit confused. But anyway, in this particular case, you know, this name here, because it involves a property, it's public information, you can go to Real List and confirm the name anyway, right? You don't need client's help. You can actually confirm it on Real List, okay? And this is just the client's address, so I fill out the client's address and client's telephone number, and Centermac's address and Centermac's phone number. And here's a description of the property, 9915 Garden Grove Boulevard, Garden Grove. And on the description, you always put down approximately how many square feet for commercial. Approximately 17,424 square foot lot, with approximately 3,500 square foot building. And the listed price is 1.650. The market price is probably about 1.45, based on $480 per square foot market price. And we have a 6 months listing. Oh, actually, that had to be changed. Client only wanted a 4 months listing. Let me go ahead and change that. Remember, we're getting close to 2017. You know how often I see a document where the date is the year is actually wrong as we get close to the end of the year? Be careful. Be very careful. Okay? Don't put down the wrong year. Okay. All right, next. Because this is not a lease, so I don't pay any attention to D. Okay? Exclusive employment and right. Now, this is just a standard language. Usually, I just skip it. Okay. There are a couple of things I want to point out to you. That in AIR form and F form that is very different from CAR form is one of which is the safety period. The AIR form actually is more advantageous to a listing agent than the CAR form, because if you sign a 4 months listing with the client, and let's say within the first week you found a buyer, you open escrow, buyer wanted a 5 months escrow, right? You know, in the CAR form, once your listing expires, and if this buyer does not close escrow, you are at risk of losing this listing. You do not get extra time with the CAR form, right? Because with the CAR form, on April 1st, my listing expires. If for whatever reason, this buyer failed to close, my listing had expired, and I do not get extra time, unless client wants to give me extra time, right? With the AIR form, it works a little differently. Whatever time that is spent within escrow doesn't count toward the listing period. So in other words, if I find a buyer, and if I had used an AIR form, and that buyer opened an escrow, and then failed to close escrow after March 31st, my listing has over 3 months left. In other words, comes March 31st, and let's say, you know, on April 15th, the buyer told the listing agent, sorry, we cancel it. We just couldn't close. We don't have enough funds to close. I got more protection under the air form than I do under the car form, because under the air form, I got 3 months and 3 weeks extra after March 31st if this guy doesn't close. And I was told, let's say on April 15th, this guy doesn't close. My listing technically does not expire until 3 months and 3 weeks after the current escrow had expired and the buyer had not closed. So I got extra time under the air form than I do under the car form. So that's why I like the air form a lot better, but they don't have this feature on the car form. For residential, actually you can modify the residential listing agreement to have this feature. You just need to add an addendum to it. You know, you can actually kind of modify the car form to make it look like air form to give you that extra protection. Okay. Commission, yeah, another thing about air form, because most of the time, you know, for commercial, especially when you have like a lease listing agreement, you have, sometimes they go by a commission schedule. So you just attach a commission schedule. Okay, it's not a fixed amount, and it is varied. Now, in this particular case, we actually, the client actually made a request to have two tiers of commission rate. If it's within this tier, is one rate. Is within that tier, is another rate. Now, if that's the case, you can't really put a number here. You got to attach a commission schedule because we have 2 tiers. Okay, so I have to prepare a commission schedule and attach it to the air form. Some buyers are some sellers are. I'm talking about sellers. Some sellers are very sophisticated. So they say, okay, if it's above this price, you get so much in commission. If it's below this price, you get 1%. If it's below a certain price, you get a different percentage if it's above a certain price. So for that reason, I need a commission schedule. Okay, I just attach a commission schedule to this. And the rest is pretty standard, so you don't really have a lot to complete. And then you got the arbitration clause, right? And notice that on paragraph 12, now for commercial, oftentimes you have to add paragraphs, right? So if you have any additional provision may or may not have anything to do with commission. So if you have additional terms and conditions, you can actually add an addendum. And then in here, now your addendum, because the standard form ends with paragraph it ends with paragraph 13. So on your addendum, you actually have to start with paragraph 14, okay? And then, you know, you finish up with whatever the last paragraph is, okay? Just so you don't repeat the paragraph numbers on the addendum. You just use a different paragraph number because the last one is 13, okay? And then this one here, you know how to fill this out. It doesn't require my explanation here. So this is done. So I'll just go ahead and save this. And don't forget, I have to attach the addendum, which is prepared separately. I think I did prepare a separate addendum to this. Let me see if it's here. Yeah, so the client actually negotiated a commission schedule with me. So in this case, client says if it's 1.6 million or greater, you get 4.5. If it's less than 1.6, you get 4. So that's what we negotiated. Okay, so that's commission schedule. E-sign here, E-sign here. Make sure this is attached to your AIR form. Okay. Now remember, you still need your agency disclosure though. So don't forget to make client sign the agency disclosure because this is a sale of real estate. For sale of real estate, it doesn't matter whether it's commercial or residential. You need the agency disclosure, right? Let's see, where's my agency disclosure? Okay, I need to prepare one since I don't have it. Let's see if it's here. Probably don't have it here, but let me go ahead and prepare an agency disclosure. AIR actually has its own agency disclosure form. I'll show you. I do have agency disclosure, right? That's right. I got an agency disclosure. Let me take a look. This is probably the AIR form. You see, AIR has its own agency disclosure. So when you're using AIR, you use the AIR agency disclosure. But the content is actually the same as the car agency disclosure. There's really no difference between the AIR or the car. But since I'm using AIR, I'm using AIR forms all the way, okay? So that's something that will be required to be signed, even for commercial, okay? Don't forget, or else you don't have a valid listing, okay? So that is an exclusive for a commercial. So we have an exclusive for sale of business, and we have an exclusive listing agreement for sale of commercial property. Now, let's look at an exclusive for I'm sure you guys know what an exclusive listing agreement is for residential, so I don't really need to repeat that. How about we try something different? We look at open listing. Now, let's say I do an open listing. They actually do have open listings, if I'm not mistaken. Or car form anyway, so I gotta use car form. Not for air form. Air form, they don't have open listing. Okay, this is a car form open listing. Now, if you have a commercial property that that you need an open listing for agreement for, unfortunately, air form does not have a standard form for open listing. You only have car form. Now, what do you do in this case? You just have to improvise, because you can actually make your own open listing form. But in this case, you got a residential open listing. Be able to load the form. What's going on? Okay, I don't know what happened. I can't open it. Well, don't have access to it. Let me try another type of listing. It's called the exclusive agency. Do I have an exclusive agency form? I do. Here. This is exclusive agency form. If you recall exclusive agency form, maybe they took out the open listing. I'm not sure. But for residential, you can sign an exclusive agency, which is different from exclusive right to sell. Okay, and it will have the language that talks about if the buyer is procured by the seller, the agent is not entitled to any commission. So that's what an exclusive agency listing agreement is. It's different from exclusive right to sell, where it doesn't matter who finds the buyer. So, but the way you fill out the form is basically the same. Okay, you do not need to add any special language to it, because it has the right language that is built in here. Okay. Now, if you look at this one, it says seller agrees to pay the broker as compensation for services, irrespective of agency. Wait a minute. Yeah. And then it says, if during the listing period or any extension, broker or any other broker agent procures a ready, willing, and able buyer whose offers to purchase the property on any price and terms is accepted by seller, provided the buyer completes the transaction or it's prevented from doing so by seller. Now, notice this language here. It says broker or any other broker or agent, and it excludes seller. So this one looks more like an exclusive agency, because if the seller finds their own buyer, agent earns no commission. So this is what an exclusive agency listing agreement looks like using card form. Now, what happens if you have a commercial listing where you're trying to do an exclusive agency and there's no standard form? If you try to look for a standard form for exclusive agency listing agreement for air, you're not going to find one. So you have to kind of modify the exclusive right to sell. You know, that one you probably will have to drop your own language, and you just need me to sign off on it. Okay. All right, next. A couple other things I want to show you is you don't always have to represent the buyer. Now, what if you have a listing agreement and you do not want to be involved in dual agency, but you still want to make the full commission? There's a way to do this. You can have the buyer sign a buyer non-agency agreement. What happens if you have a listing on Zillow and then you get a phone call from a buyer say, hey, I don't have an agent, I'm interested in your property. And then buyer say, I want to see the property. So buyer came by, you show the property to the buyer. The whole time, you never agreed to represent the buyer. It can be done. You can actually earn the full commission if the listing agreement does not prohibit you from earning the full commission. If the other side is unrepresented, you can actually earn the full commission without representing the buyer by having the buyer sign a buyer non-agency agreement. If the buyer is okay with it, fine. Why be a dual agent and take the risk of being a dual agent if you don't have to be one? You just make the buyer sign a non-agency agreement. Okay. Now, I want to show you a few things about the buyer non-agency agreement so you know that it can be done and you don't have to worry about misleading the buyer, because you can make the buyer sign this and the buyer later on can't say that, well, I thought you were my agent. Well, you know, I wasn't your agent. You know, you signed this non-agency agreeing that I wasn't representing you, right? So here, okay, it says here, no representation of buyer by listing broker. Buyer understands and agrees to the following. Listing broker does not represent the buyer, and listing broker will not be buyer's agent during any negotiation or transaction that results between buyer and seller regarding the property. All acts of listing broker, even those that assist buyer in entering into a transaction or performing or completing any of buyer's contractual or legal obligations, are for the benefit of seller exclusively. Any information that buyer reveals to listing broker may be conveyed to seller. Another nice thing about not representing a buyer is that you don't have to worry about disclosing bottom line because you're not a dual agent. You don't have to worry about, right? But of course, you're not going to tell the buyer your seller's bottom line. That would be very stupid to do that anyway. Okay, is that the buyer has been made aware that whatever information that the buyer tells the listing broker is not obligated to keep it confidential, because any information the buyer reveals to a listing broker may be conveyed to the seller. Okay, and it also says listing broker does not represent buyer, and listing broker will not be a buyer's agent, even though listing broker may provide buyer forms describing agency relationships as required by law or otherwise. You know, the agency disclosure that you provide to the parties, the form itself rather doesn't really say which side you represent. It really doesn't say. All the form does is simply tells the recipient all the legal obligations and duties of each type of agency. Okay, that's all it does. It doesn't confirm the agency. It doesn't confirm the agency relationship between the person providing the form and the person receiving the form. It only spells out the different duties and obligations of each type of relationship. That's what an agency disclosure is. It's not a confirmation of agency relationship. Okay. Next. Now, you see that it says here, if you have this form size, it says here, that it says here, a listing broker may provide buyer forms describing agency relationships as required by law or otherwise. We talked about that. Representation of buyer by others. Usually you don't sign this form if the other side is represented by an agent. So this box is really applicable. And then you would check this box. It will say buyer is not represented at this time by a real estate licensee. Most of the time you check this box. Buyer has the right to enter into an agency relationship with a real estate licensee other than listing broker at any time during any negotiation or transaction regarding the property. Now, this form was not available many years ago, such that many listing brokers, because they wanted to earn the full commission, they wind up representing the buyer as their agent and wind up being a dual agent. Just know that you don't have to be a dual agent to earn the full commission. Okay? If you don't have to, you don't have to. You're not required to represent any buyers you don't want to represent. You can still make the full commission unless seller and you negotiated a deal whereby you are prohibited from earning the full commission unless you also represent the buyer. But that would be very strange. How many sellers would insist that you represent the buyer also just so that you can earn your full commission? That would be ridiculous. Okay. So certainly one to consider, you don't have to represent the buyer. Now, what would be a good reason why you want to be a dual agency when this form is available to you so that you don't have to represent the buyer? It says you're trying to convert this buyer into your future client. That might be the only reason why you want to be a dual agency. Now, is there a way to not be a dual agent on this transaction and still convert this buyer into a future client? Yeah, there is, I'm sure, right? I mean, you can be nice to this buyer, make him sign the buyer non-agency agreement, and then after the deal closes, you try to make him or her your client for future transactions. Why not? You can do that as well, right? Maybe some agents might think that, well, it's probably easier for me to make him my client if he's already my client on this transaction. But that's really a personal choice, okay? All right, so that's a buyer agency, a non-agency agreement. You got buyer representation agreement, non-exclusive. Now, that is a form I have never used before, so I'm kind of curious as to what it looks like. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay. I don't know why you had such a form. Non-exclusive right to represent. To be honest with you, I don't know what it is. I'll talk to you about it the next time. Okay. And confirmation of real estate agency relationship form. Now, this is the form that you want to use if you want to confirm the relationship. Okay. And you can also have seller non-agency agreement. For example, you know, you represent a buyer who's interested in a property that is not on the market. So you contacted the property owner. You know, you got the property owner's contact information through the public channel, and you're asking the seller, the owner, whether they want to sell it. Do you have to be the listing agent in order to make the transaction work for your buyer? You don't have to be. You can actually sign a seller non-agency agreement where you only represent the buyer, you don't represent the seller. The seller is basically unrepresented. It can be done. Okay, so this is the form that you might want to use. Same idea, actually. If you make the seller sign this form, make him acknowledge that you don't represent the seller, even though you may prepare forms for the seller to sign, but you're doing so for the convenience of your buyer and for the benefit of the buyer and not for the benefit of the seller. Okay? Now, can you not represent the seller and still be paid your commission by the seller? Of course. Nobody says you have to represent the seller in order to earn a commission from the seller. Who pays the commission does not determine the agency relationship. You can have agency relationship that is established regardless of who pays the commission. All right, the payer of the commission, the recipient of the commission, and the payer commission are not always in an agency relationship, and they don't have to be an agency relationship. Okay, so you can do it with the seller, or you can do it with the buyer. Remember, you don't have to be involved with dual agency. If you don't want to be involved and the deal can still work for you, don't be involved in dual agency if there's no reason to. All right, okay, so that's the different forms that you might use for when you sign a listing. Let me see if I can find anything else. Referral fee agreement. I want to talk about referral fee agreement. Okay. I think it's important to know about referral fee agreement. You know, it's always good to have any kind of referral fee arrangement in writing. Whenever you deal with a non-agent, or even when you deal with an agent, it's not a bad idea to have a referral fee agreement. So you look at the form, the referring broker. Oh, this is actually between brokers and brokers. It doesn't involve any non-licensee. So, you know, when you have another brokerage firm that refers business to you, and you want to pay them a referral fee, you can enter into a referral fee agreement with this particular brokerage firm. You know, so it's available for you to use if you want to use it. And the consideration, so you put down, you know, how much of the total gross compensation earned by you goes to the referrer, okay? Or you can specify it in terms of a dollar amount. You have a choice, okay? That's the total gross commission earned by recipient broker. Now, what happens if you have a $1 million listing? Your total commission is 5%, right? And you split 2.5% to the selling agent, which means that your total commission that you earn from the transaction is $25,000. And if you have a referral fee agreement, with a different brokerage firm that had previously referred this seller to you for this listing opportunity, and if the arrangement is 50% of the total gross commission earned by you, how much do you have to pay this referral? $12,500, because the total that you earned after the split is $25,000. So if I put down 50% here, you will pay $12,500 to the referring brokerage firm. Okay. All right, that's that.